When record investment fails to stabilize patient safety, the disconnect suggests a failure that additional revenue alone cannot fix. This evidence sits at the core of a recent submission to the UK Parliament's Modernising Elections inquiry. The problem it highlights is simple. Our electoral law authorizes entry into office, but it provides zero structural mechanisms to track how that authority is executed once a government actually takes power. Without a legally mandated public governing record, the state is permitted to oversee its own failures, while remaining shielded from the consequences by its own administrative complexity. To understand the significance of this administrative gap, we must look at the nature of a constitutional statute. This is a law that dictates the absolute duties and the legal relationship between the citizen and the state. The British courts confirmed the weight of these laws in the case of Thoburn v. Sunderland City Council. The precedent established there dictates that constitutional statutes cannot be quietly or impliedly repealed by later, lesser administrative acts. The National Health Service Act is recognized as exactly this type of constitutional statute. It carries a non-negotiable legal duty for the government to protect the health of the public. Over the last several decades, health reform has steadily bypassed this absolute duty. Successive governments have hidden ultimate accountability behind a maze of delegated arm's-length bodies and constantly shifting administrative structures. When executives restructure the NHS without mapping specific legal accountability for the resulting outcomes, they are actively eroding foundational constitutional rights by stealth. Fixing this requires a mechanism governed by a strict threshold test. This tool does not exist to scrutinize daily political arguments. It is strictly triggered by major reforms that alter constitutional structure, impact public safety, or involve massive public expenditure. The Health and Social Care Act of 2012 provides the definitive historical case study. It was a reform that clearly breached this severity threshold, yet entirely evaded constitutional tracking. The 2012 Act shattered the Secretary of State's singular statutory duty to provide a health service. It replaced it with a marketized league table governance model, where fragmented oversight bodies operate based on metrics and rankings, leaving a void in direct accountability. Granting localized autonomy without attaching strict statutory accountability turns these organizations inward. It creates an incentive structure where trusts investigate themselves, prioritize performance metrics over complex patient care, and actively suppress warning signals from reaching the government. The Mid-Staffordshire disaster stands as the ultimate historical consequence of this structure. Corporate self-interest and target chasing were prioritized over basic patient safety, leading to hundreds of preventable deaths. Operational autonomy, when deliberately divorced from statutory accountability, leads to systemic obfuscation. The result is the normalization of preventable harm. The proposed structural fix is a statutory democratic accountability mechanism. In practice, this operates as a highly visible, legally mandated public governing record. This is a governance ledger matrix. Its primary function is accountability mapping. It consolidates fragmented scrutiny from coroners, the Care Quality Commission, and the Ombudsman, formatting it into a single, unified chain of evidence. When an arm's-length body flags a safety failure or issues a Prevent Future Deaths report, this ledger forces ministers to document a legally binding escalation path. It draws a direct connection between the alert and the individual holding the power to fix it. This ledger alters legal liability. By establishing a mathematically traceable chain of events for clinical negligence, it strips away the ability for executives to use system error as a defense mechanism. Mapping exact ministerial responsibilities forces the government to answer for the execution and the consequences of their policies.